Converted man here. I've got wasteman, waste not, want not man. And he is a theist. Oh dear. So I have to crush him with logic. No, just kidding. Wasteman, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Ah, good. Good. Okay. Now the pleasantries are out of the way. Time to crush each other. Okay,
All right, let's have
so
at it.
yeah, what brand of theology are you specifically? If you could dive into that for us.
Yeah, I'm a Christian. I'm a non-denominational Christian, so I don't subscribe to any denominations like Catholicism or Protestantism or Mormonism or whatever. Because to be honest, I don't really think there is any reason to go beyond the simple form of Christianity. There's no reason to add on any additional doctrine to what Jesus himself taught. So I would not affiliate with any denomination. In terms of simple issues, I do believe that Jesus is the Son of God. I believe in doctrines like the Trinity. I think that um, I I'm not a creationist. I accept evolution, and I actually even believe in abiogenesis. And those are some of the
Yay!
positions I subscribe to.
All right, I was going to ask if you were, a young earther or thought the world or universe was old or young or whatever. So you're fine with 13 billion-year-old universe and a 4.5 billion-year-old Earth.
No, yeah, that's fine. And I don't
Yeah,
personally, I don't see any real reason to think it's inconsistent with religion per se. But
that's
that's something we can discuss.
yeah, that's great because that's one of those sore points with that I have with as a former Christian that say, look, Christians, look, you're not doing yourselves any favor. You've intertwined this belief into this false idea, and so you've made it that your God can't possibly exist because if there is a God, then it used evolution. It used the things that we can observe. I mean, even the early Christians, became kind of proto scientists, if you will, to try to learn more about how God did things. And here they are, years later denying it because of doctrine and ideology. It's like,
I so
guys,
that
stop
I
it.
would, yeah. And let me just add something. Um, Online, you'll see like guys like Ken Ham or Kent Hovind promoting creationism, whatever. But it is true that the creationist movement originated as a largely American phenomenon. If you go to countries like Canada or in Europe, you'll find that the majority of Christians have no problem with evolution or this kind of stuff. And the creationist movement originated in the 1960s, according to a book by historian named Ronald Numbers, and it was imported to the rest of the world from there or exported. And so, while it seems like there's a very big debate today, and there is of many creationists, it is not nearly representative of all Christian opinion, or nearly all, or even the majority. It
No,
mostly is
yeah,
American.
it's a relative. Well, it's a big minority, but it's still a very noisy one. But yeah, it does. I
Absolutely.
agree with you that it is something that's something more of a phenomenon in America, although it's spread other places. Although Hinduism had some of it and Islam has some of it, but their
Yeah.
versions are different. Hinduism has an old universe, but it's not quite as old as it should be, if I recall correctly. And Islam, I don't know. They've got a magic rock. I don't know anything else. So, uh, your what things do you base your beliefs on? Or do you think that there's evidence? What kind of evidence? Uh, what is the reason for the hope that you have?
When it comes to generally theism, I do I do think that it makes it harder to be an atheist for me, or to not accept the existence of God when it comes to just a way of thinking about the origins of the universe and why I was there. I don't think there's, in my opinion, the way and how I've been thinking about it, I can't find any good reason and I can find good reasons as to why. I think there are good reasons as to why it couldn't have been a naturalistic origin. And I also think there's credence in the fine tuning argument, and I'm sure you'll disagree with me there. And maybe you can discuss that later. And in terms of Christianity, I also give credence to the arguments that have been made by some Christian historians that there is good reason to think that Jesus rose from the dead, and also think across history. And this is something I might also elaborate later. Christianity has probably done more good than any other system of thought or whatever than in human history. And I think that's exactly what I would expect to see if Christianity was true. And that's what I think I do see across history and having studied history. I'm sure you'll try to oppose that, and maybe we'll see what comes out of that. And so those are some reasons why I would be a theist and further a Christian theist.
Were you raised Christian, or did you come to it at some point?
My family is Christian, but not very religious at all. I wasn't really ever brought to church or anything. It was almost like a cultural background kind of thing. When I started looking at religion and whatever, I decided to start out as an agnostic. But later on, I did move to Christianity for the reasons I've just outlined.
So, I'm ignoring chat. Stop it, guys. I glanced at chat. That was a mistake. So, okay, let's start with the beginning of the universe. Sounds like a good place to start. So, about 13 billion years ago, some event transpired that I don't even know really. I think that they kind of call it the singularity, but then there's other terms that they might use. Depends on the cosmology, but essentially it's the Big Bang theory, or rather it's the large expansion model. I think it's come the actual terminology for it. And your thought is that this is inexplicable. This is something that can only be answered by a god, or that. And so I guess my question is this an appeal to mystery? Well, I don't know how the universe could be, so it must have been God.
Well, no, I think there are reasons why it couldn't be naturalism. And so the only alternative I see is God.
Well, why couldn't it be natural?
Well, first of all, do you agree with me that the universe began to exist, or is that something we should discuss?
The terminology is tricky because you get to the T1 point, as it's called, which is when time began, at least as far as the mathematics goes. And you can't talk about a before because there isn't a before, because there isn't time. So the language starts becoming weird, and you get into you'll have to have imaginary numbers or something like this. And the physics, as we understand them, breaks down. Everything that we understand, how we understand reality, just fails mathematically, which is the only way we can really look at this, because it's, we're not, we can look at the background radiation, things like that. That's how we know it's even a thing. But to properly map it, model it, mathematics is, I think, the best we've got. I could be wrong on that. I'm no expert, no cosmologist. I'm an amateur logistician at best. And so when you start talking about anything prior to the T1 event, you're in territory that science cannot speak to, because we don't know.
All right, so just in terms of the terminology, would you, just to say it differently, would you agree that there was a point in time in which there was no prior point?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's before or prior to the T1 point. It's completely unknown, and it might be unknowable. I don't know. It might be one day we figure it out, but that day, as far as I know, it's not today. Simply put, the math isn't there. The physics, we don't know what they would be like, because everything would be squeezed together in this little teeny dot. Everything that is in a very small spot, and that spot is very, very, very hot and about to get very big very quickly, and it's about to get very big everywhere all at once. And I have no idea what those physics are like, so I can't I can't describe it. I can't speak to it. I can't make any comment on it. I cannot form a hypothesis about it. It is the great unknown because there's no data to go on. And I don't dare throw philosophy at it because philosophy could be anything. So I would need a system. I don't have mathematics. I don't have logic at this point because I don't know that logic even maps to before the T1 point. It's like, well, it's different physics. So who knows what that's like? Maybe it's different
Well,
logic. Maybe not. Who knows? It's a great. It's
not necessarily. Logic is just what. Logic is just what isn't incoherent.
Well, that's our understanding of it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the way things always were. It might have been that things were completely incoherent. Who knows? It's all pure speculation. If you go, if you go off to the question mark, and then that's all it is. It's pure speculation. So I don't know. The only thing I can talk of is okay. T1 point, yeah. Okay, then that's there forward. We can talk about that. Anything prior to that, I don't have any idea, and I don't know how anyone would know anything.
All right, but
about
it couldn't. Like by definition, what is real can't be incoherent. But anyways, the universe is.
That's the way we know now, but who knows if it was always that way?
I mean, it seems
if
like
we're gonna do philosophy on it, yeah, well, yes, and that's what I'm saying is that's why I want to avoid prior to the T1 point because anything goes if you're in the area in the realm of complete possibility because you don't have any grounding. Then literally anything goes, including incoherence and including absurdity, because there are no rules at that point. And so I'd rather stick with data, logic, and science. It's like, well, we know about the T1 point forward for sure. We can talk about that stuff. We can measure that. We can theorize, hypothesize, etc. We can play with that stuff. So that would be my answer. I don't know, and I cannot agree to anything that I do not know the answer to.
The science suggests that there is no mathematics to describe it. It doesn't suggest that logic breaks down.
No, I didn't say that it did. But, if we're going to go before we can talk about it using science, then how do I even frame that into any sort of logic? It's
well,
like
nothing currently known logic. But listen,
right, exactly.
The two options are that either the universe began to exist or it was eternal. And the conclusion that most
it's a false dichotomy.
No?
It's a false dichotomy. Because it could have always been.
That's what I just said. It's either eternal or it began to exist.
No, but began to exist suggests a lot. There's some loaded words there. And there might be some other option that we just don't know about. And so I don't want to exclude that. I don't know. That's it. That's where that lives.
Semantics. Listen, let me phrase it another way. There was either a point in which there was no prior point or there was.
Well, maybe. Or maybe not. I mean, how do we know that's the case?
But that's just a logical dichotomy. It's like either this is a rock or it's not. There's no other option.
After the T1 point, sure, but before that, who knows?
No. This is a logical dichotomy.
Right, but logic only logic functions in the universe that we have. We don't know that logic functions in the universe we don't have.
Logic is not something contingent on our physics.
How do you know that? I mean, we base logic.
Wait. Why would you suggest? Why would you suggest that logic is contingent on?
Logic maps to the reality that we have, correct?
Logic is an abstract system. It's not a physical system.
I didn't say it was. I said it maps to it. We observe things and we make what the system of logic from the things we observed. Is that correct?
No, listen, I said that logic is not contingent on physics, and you said why not? The reason why it's not is because it's an abstract system.
Yeah, and we came up with it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's true.
Right, and we came up with it based on our observations of the reality we find ourselves in.
We
Right.
came up with descriptions of logical
Right.
systems. Now, the
Yes.
descriptions might be variable depending on which system you use, but fundamentally, we're trying to describe what a specific abstract system is, not a physical system that could be contingent on natural laws. Whether or not 1 plus 1 equals 2 will always
Right.
be true. It doesn't matter which
Well,
physical system you use.
but that's true in the reality that we know of. If a different reality had
That's true by
formed,
definition.
no, if a different reality had formed, it might be totally different. We don't know. I mean, you're going into the realm of possibilities and other worlds in the ether of the unknown, where here there be dragons. And like I said, if you do that, then all options are available to me. If you wish to constrain me to a dichotomy, then you have to live in the realm of the T1 forward point, which means we can't talk about, well, either it's this or it's that. Well, no, we have a universe. We don't know how, we just know that there's a universe here. We cannot form any statement other than what we know. We cannot make a dichotomy. Well, either it's always been here or it's just started at some arbitrary point. No, we can't. We don't know. We can't say anything
Yeah,
about
it's either always been here or it wasn't. That
it. But we don't
is
know. There's might be
that's an
another option. We have no idea. We have no way of knowing. That's my point.
no, but
That's what the problem is.
listen.
Is
If I showed you a rock and I said, like, if I showed you something, it doesn't matter what it is, and I told you this either is a rock or it's not, that
Mhm.
must be true.
In this reality, sure.
In any reality, it's
Well, you
it's
don't know,
you
you
have a
don't know
statement.
about other
No,
realities. You only know about this one. We only know about
you-
this reality. That's the point I'm making.
it seems like an incoherent point to me. I'm not suggesting something that's contingent on this reality.
Well, but you have to because
No, I don't.
well, yes, because the only reality we know is this one, and the only universe we know is this one.
No, but logic isn't a real physical thing that exists
No.
in this reality.
Yes, it exists in our minds. We came up with these certain rules and observations based on certain principles.
But logic doesn't exist.
Sure does in the mind as an abstract concept. In
No,
this,
we have chemicals in our brain that connect and create some conscious perception of what we think
right,
logic is.
it's an
But
abstract idea, just like God.
logic itself doesn't, like, numbers don't exist.
Right, I agree. Numbers and logic only exist in minds. They do not exist other than that, just like God.
Yeah.
But you know,
No. The simple point is they're not literally real, and they can't be contingent on this reality.
well, they are. I would say they. I think that
Numbers
they
are
are.
real.
No, but they're abstract based on what we
Exactly.
observe. But if we had different things to observe, then something
They're
else
not based on
would take their
observation.
place. Huh?
They're not based on observation.
The what now?
Numbers are not, they don't, imaginary numbers are a field of math you can perform, and they are not based on any observations. They don't exist
Right.
anywhere. Logic is not based
Those
on
are also
observation.
abstractions as well.
No,
It,
logic is not based on observation.
what is it based on?
It's based on, um, I don't do, I'm not sure how to describe this. It's just logical systems are series of propositions that must logically follow from one another, or they don't.
Okay, then how do you know that any proposition follows from the other one unless you check in with reality at some point?
You don't need to. I can prove that 5 plus 5 equals 10 without getting 5 apples in one set and 5 apples in another set.
But that's mathematical logic, not
Yes.
not formalized or informal logic, which is the logic of language. That's the language I would assume we're using is the logic of language, not the logic of mathematics.
Do you think mathematical logic breaks down?
Huh?
Do you think mathematical logic can break down?
I don't know. I don't, not in this reality. At least, I mean, possibly. I don't know. I'm not a mathematician.
Okay, listen.
But the thing
If you
is,
say no, wait.
you're getting off the topic. The main point is your contention is it's either this or it's that. And I say
Yeah,
we
that's
don't
true.
know. I don't know that because if you're going to talk about anything before the T1 point, the only honest answer is we don't know. So we don't know that it could only be this or that. We have no idea. It
Okay,
could have
but
been any number of things that we haven't even considered because reality is really weird.
I feel like you're trying
Yeah.
to almost dance around the point. It's like,
No, no.
no, listen. By
It's
suggesting that mathematics can break down in another reality, you
sure.
are saying you're suggesting it's possible that mathematics is contingent on this reality. That's a false statement.
How do you know? Have you seen a different reality?
Imaginary numbers literally are absent from this reality, and you can still do math with
Well,
them.
but they exist in the framework that we created them, which is in this
They don't
reality.
exist in reality.
They exist in our brains the same way as the other numbers.
No, no,
They're
they
all
don't.
based. Okay, so where do these imaginary numbers aren't in your brain?
No, we have ideas of these things,
Right.
but they're not actually anywhere at
Yeah.
all.
Exactly. Well, they're in your brain. They have to be somewhere. The concept has to be
Yeah,
held
the
somewhere.
concept is in our brains,
Right.
not the
Exactly.
actual thing.
Right. The actual thing isn't even a thing.
Exactly. And it's not
Right.
in this reality, so it doesn't depend
Well,
on this
it
reality.
is in this reality because it's still in your brain, which is in this
No,
reality.
the concept is in our brain,
Yes.
not the actual imaginary numbers.
Right. Because there aren't any, just the concept.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly. You got it. And that's what
Yeah,
I'm
which
thinking.
means
But that's the,
imaginary numbers are not in this reality. We have a concept of them that's in our brain, but the
right.
numbers themselves are not in this reality.
So they could then be in a different reality then.
This
Couldn't they?
is
Couldn't they?
don't you see how you're trying to evade a very simple point?
No, no, I'm not at all because this is the thing with we're trying to answer basically what is the nature of reality. That's what we're asking, right? We're saying, well, either the universe always was or it came into being at some arbitrary point. And I'm saying
It either always was or it wasn't.
we don't know that. That's a false dichotomy because a different
It's a correct dichotomy.
no, it's not even close. That's the fundamental problem that many apologists and theists make is that, oh, well, there has to be this dichotomy. No, you're not thinking uh, abstractly enough at that point because there could be any number of other possibilities that we don't even have the conceptualization or words for because the nature of reality turns out to be awfully odd at times
No,
and
see,
far
you're
beyond what we could normally figure out on our own. You know, like who would have imagined that atoms were what they were or you know, different particles and quantum physics and all that. It's amazing and we discover this. But the moment that we say, well, let's do some philosophy, because that's what we're doing, we say, well, it's either this or that. And I go, well, how do we know that? Well, because it can't be any other way. Well, how do we know that? How do we know it can be? How do we know it can't be a different way? We don't, because we do not know anything before the T1 point. So if you're going to go before the T1 point, and you have to make a dichotomy, then everything's on the table, including the absurd. And that's my
I
point.
think you're misunderstanding what scientists say about before the T1 point. What they say is not that math breaks down or that logic breaks down. They say that our models break down.
Right. So we can't do, well, we don't know how to do physics or math at that point
There's
with our
nothing that
models.
suggests that logic is in any way even something that could break down or could
Well,
be otherwise.
it could, well, I don't know. I've not seen what that would look like yet. I don't have the data. I don't have any way to make any statement of this unknown realm.
But I gave you straight up proof that logic in terms of imaginary numbers aren't dependent on this reality. And
But
you're
they are
still
because they're still dependent on your brain. You're still
no,
dependent.
the concept was made by brain if humans
Concept.
didn't exist. The,
If they wouldn't be. There wouldn't be any concepts if there wasn't any mind to conceive them.
if there was no mind to conceive them, it would still be logically possible to do imaginary numbers.
In this particular reality,
No, but imaginary numbers are not in this reality.
okay, then again, if we're going to talk about a different reality, then they might exist in that other reality, and they're not imaginary, they're real.
What other reality?
I don't know, whatever reality
You're just making stuff
you
up.
can posit. Exactly, just like God is made up.
No, but you're posing something literally, by your definition, logically incoherent.
That's what God is.
No, listen. Stop trying to deflect the point. For what you're positing, by your definition, is logically incoherent.
Right, exactly like God. That's my point. Is if you're going to say there's a dichotomy, the universe was always here or popped into existence, then I'm going to go off on any number of incoherentness because you're saying something that you
So
can't.
you admit it's incoherent.
You can't possibly. I said that several times already. That anything before the T1 point is pure speculation and hypothesis. It's in the ether. It's in the realm of philosophy. It's disconnected from anything else because anything and everything goes at that point since we're in the realm of the hypothetical and the imagination. And so to make a dichotomy statement about the origins of the universe, that it's either this or that, or any other statement other than the universe simply exists, is to go into the realm of the hypothetical, of the imagination. And there I'm able to imagine any sort of thing, no matter how absurd or ridiculous, and say, well, this reality is but one of many possible ones. Why not? Because all rules are off the table if we're in the realm.
Who said that all rules are off the table?
Well, we're talking about something that we can't know anything about, which is anything before the T1 point.
Who said we can't know anything about it other than yourself?
I think that we don't know anything about it right now. Maybe we will, but not today. Do you know anything about it?
What physicist follows this idea that logic could break down before this point?
I didn't say that any physicist did. I never appealed to anyone but myself. My argument stands or fails on its own. My only point, and will continue to be, is anything before the T1 point is unknown at this point.
Why not?
Why is it that way? I don't know. It just is right now. Scientists haven't figured it out yet.
No, you're saying it is true that it's unknowable, and I'm saying...
I said it's unknown right now. I never said it was unknowable.
You just said unknowable. Anyway.
It's unknown. Maybe it's unknowable. Right now it's unknown. So how would you know that it's this or that, because that's a knowledge claim?
The way you know it is because logic is not dependent on reality.
Okay, well, in this reality, that might be the case.
No, I'm saying it's not dependent on any reality.
Well, that's a supposition that goes into places that you cannot hope to know because we only know of this reality. We don't know that logic is only is not in fact dependent upon this particular reality. It might be a very different type of logic in a different type of reality. So, if you're not willing to let the dichotomy, which is false because we can't propose any dichotomy, if you can't let that go, then I'm free to be in the realm of the absurd, which is, as far as I can tell,
it really is absurd.
Right, just like God. That's my point.
Okay, so I don't think we're going to make any progress on this question. I think what you're saying is outright incoherent with. Why do you think God is incoherent? Let's hear that on a different topic.
The same reasons. It's posited as a thing that comes before the T1 point, which you can't know anything about.
No, God is not posited as before the T1 point. God has no relation to time as it is.
Right, which is even more incoherent.
That's not incoherent.
There's no when for it to do anything.
Wait, what do you think the word incoherent means?
What do you think it means?
I think something incoherent. Okay. No, listen. You asked me a question. I think incoherent means in some way logically contradictory.
Right. And so we only know what it's like to be in time. We don't have any other way of conceiving how it could be to be atemporal, other than in science fiction or something of this. These are
And
things
how
we've
does
been.
us not knowing mean it's logically contradictory?
I said, well, if there's no time, then there's no you cannot do anything because time requires something to be able to change, and that is, as far as we know, possible because time exists. If you
Yeah,
don't
but
have time,
Deacon Birdman, isn't that just true in our reality?
yes, exactly. And that's the only thing
So you can't apply that to God by your own logic.
okay. Well, yes, if God doesn't exist in this reality, I can't apply to
It
it.
doesn't exist in this universe. That's what we're talking.
Okay,
That's
well
what we mean.
then God doesn't exist, and
Why?
I'm
No, in this
because
physical universe.
well, that's all there is that we know about.
How
At
do you
any
know that? Oh, how do you know that's all? Oh,
well, we
a
don't know
positive
of
statement.
anything else. We don't know
Oh,
of anything else.
wait, that's a positive statement.
I said that as far as we know, I should
No, no,
say.
not the first time. Listen,
Well, okay,
saying as far as we know isn't.
yeah,
You're
that's what
suggesting
we
it's
have observed,
logically incoherent.
logically coherent.
Yeah,
Well, if it's
and
not in
now
this
you're
universe,
saying
if
it's
it's
based
not
on
in,
what we know. Those are two
right,
different things.
well, if
What we
it's
know from observation doesn't suggest logical incoherence.
well,
Observation suggests what we might know, but
right,
logical
but how would
incoherence
how would
suggests
any
absence of observation what must be true.
well depends on what system you're using, but there's a large
Name me any
subsistence.
system that contradicts what I just said.
Well, there's non-classical logics that would have all sorts of problems with it, but
Non-classical logic
that's
contradicts me.
huh?
Non-classical logic contradicts what I'm saying now.
It can, yes.
Explain that to me right now.
Well, that would require several hours worth.
I'm not
Non-classical
sure. I
logic
think you're
is
making things up, my guy.
okay. I'm not going to justify my knowledge to you. It's not important to me. But you can believe what you want, which is what you do, because that's what God is. It's
But
a
you can't even
belief.
describe it.
You can't describe God. That's your problem, not mine. I don't
No,
believe
no,
in it.
no. I said you can't describe non-classical logic, and at the same time, you're saying it contradicts what I say.
I said it
You're
could.
asserting things based on no evidence.
Well, that's what God is. It's an assertion of no evidence.
Okay, you're
You
deflecting the
should,
point again and again. Try to focus on
well,
the point that you brought up yourself.
the
You
point,
said that
yes,
non-classical logic contradicts what I'm saying,
it
and you can't
could.
even
I said
explain
it
it to me.
could. You keep leaving out the could part. See, you're going down the wrong path here.
Okay, I
I
can
said
say
it
this could be
could.
anything and then not justify it.
Sure, you have. You said that this God, whatever that
Tell me one good
is
reason to think.
beyond not
No, listen.
beyond is not bound by time or whatever that
Tell
means.
me one good reason to think that non-classical logic contradicts a single word I said in this entire conversation. Give me one good reason.
No, no,
No? All right.
no,
You
no.
can believe things based on no evidence then.
Well, that's what theism is
No, it's
belief
not. I
without
think
evidence.
there
Is
is
it?
evidence, and you
There
keep
is
asserting that.
absolutely no. Well, where is it? What evidence are you talking about?
So, in the beginning of this conversation, I think I demonstrate very easily that your suggestions about logic breaking down are impossible to be true because
No,
logic
you didn't
is not
demonstrate
based on this
anything.
reality. And listen,
Well, you
the
don't know that
majority of
logic is
physicists,
not based on reality. If you didn't
the
have reality,
majority
you
of
wouldn't have
physicists would
anything.
agree. Wait, listen. The
Would they?
majority of
You have
physicists
a
would
list
agree.
of physicists that agree with you?
No, no,
Where is this list of
I'm trying to finish my sentence. The majority of physicists would
citation
agree.
required?
Listen, I'm trying to finish my sentence. The
Yeah, go ahead.
majority of physicists would agree that there was a point in time in which there was no part-time. That's what the majority of physicists would say.
Really?
And so, yeah,
Would they?
I can show you a quote by Stephen Hawking on this very statement.
Oh, okay.
It,
Well, that's
but
one.
no, no,
Yeah,
no, no, no. No. Hawking in his quote, which I can pull up if you want me
yeah,
to,
that's
says that
one.
the majority of physicists agree. He's not saying
Okay,
I agree.
right. But
He,
that's one person making a claim. Does he have the list of the those that also agree, or is this just something that somebody said?
yeah, he's an expert. He knows literature.
Well, he is an expert, but without the citation of these lists or where he compiled the data to say that a majority of physicists agree with X, I do not know that that's the case. I need the evidence that it's the case. And since he is a good scientist, I'm sure that he has the references for those physicists that agree with this particular view, whatever it might be. But in nowhere does anyone say anything about there being even a possibility of something that could exist without time. And that's the assertion.
Yeah, philosophers do that all the time.
Philosophers, sure. If you're in the realm of philosophy, you can claim anything because you're not bound by reason or logic.
Logical systems.
Oh, no, not always. It doesn't. Only certain philosophies that care about it do. And apologetics and the belief system of Christianity has to ignore logic in order to make the arguments it does.
What are you talking about?
Well, you already started with a false dichotomy, which you
refused. No, that's
the
correct dichotomy that any philosopher of any logical system would agree with.
Well, would
any physicist would agree with.
Would they really support that claim? Then show me how many. Show me that any would. See, that's a universal claim. So all I have to do is find one person that disagrees with you. And by the way, hey, I'm a philosopher of sorts. Therefore, by saying any, and I'm one of them, then I'm the counterexample. Well, we all are. We're doing philosophy now, aren't we?
No. That's a semantic. That's semantics. I'm talking about professional philosophers.
Oh, now it's just professional philosophers that count.
That's what I always meant, man. When I said physicist, I didn't mean armchair physicist.
Okay, so we have to have an appeal to authority to justify these philosophers who will remain nameless, that you cannot summon forth to defend your points. But do you see my point? Do you see my point yet? And if you don't, I'll make it clear for you, okay?
So you want a list of philosophers? You want me to get a list of all philosophers that say, I agree that something either is or isn't true?
Sure, yeah, do that. Well, no, not that claim. The claim that either the universe has always been here or that it came into existence at some point. That's the thing that you have to show is true. But I don't care what philosophers say. I do not care what philosophers say.
It's a logical dichotomy.
About that you can't make that dichotomy because we don't know anything about what came before prior to the T1 point. You don't know. I don't know. We can't know. Period. End of story. You can't make statements about
it.
Well, you can. I won't because I refuse to pretend to know something that I don't.
Yes, you don't because you somehow have this idea that logic breaks down based on
I said
your imagination.
I don't know what goes on.
You think logic can break down, which is illogical by definition.
How do you know that? You don't know that. You don't know anything. We don't know. That's the point.
I said you believe that.
No, I don't know what to believe. Listen, I already said that at the start. Ridiculous.
You believe it's possible that logic breaks down.
Listen. Okay? It's very simple.
I think we should move on from this point. What you're saying sounds so incoherent to me, honestly.
Well, yes, so is God. That's my point.
No, but you couldn't demonstrate the logical contradiction of God. All you could say is that we don't know anything in naturalism like God, therefore God doesn't exist. And so you started by assuming naturalism, and you concluded naturalism.
Well, yes, what else is there but what we know of that we can observe?
Wait, what? Say that again?
What else is there that we... Okay. Now we're going to go into epistemology.
Say again.
We have to leave this behind. So now we're in epistemology, okay? My system is very simple. It's very simple. Empirical evidence, a repeatable test. I'll leave it at that because I don't want to grant a valid and sound argument because I know
Science isn't the only form of knowing things. You only mentioned there's the historical method, there's mathematics, there's logic.
That's within science.
Those are all ways of knowing things.
Science. Those are all subsets of science.
No, they're not.
Sure they are.
No, science is the study of the natural world.
Well, that's
based on observation and repeated tests. History, there's no repeated test in history. History is what happens in the past and isn't in repetition. There's a historical method.
There is a historical method
from the scientific method.
Right, and the historical method is one where essentially, broadly speaking, that we assume what can or cannot be done today cannot be done in the past. So
What?
that if we can't do something today that is it's impossible to do, we typically think, well, that probably also was impossible in the past. Like, for
No,
example,
many things happen in the past that aren't possible today.
well, okay, you're not hearing what I have to say. Okay.
It's besides the point because the historical method is not the scientific method. Those are different methods.
Well,
Have you studied historical methodology?
yes, and if you're not interested in what I have to say, but that's okay. I'll say it anyway. It's my channel. Uh, what we cannot do today, we assume we could not do yesterday, in the sense that we say people cannot fly without assistance from some mechanism. They cannot fly on their own. They can't just will themselves into flight. Horses cannot fly on their own. So, if anything historical posits a person on a horse flying without assistance of some mechanism, then we categorize that history as myth, not fact, not actual history, but mythology, because we say we don't have any examples of horses that can fly. We don't have any examples of humans that can fly. So we have to categorize this as mythology because we've never seen this happen before, right? Is that right?
It's funny because you actually just made a philosophical assumption.
Is that right? Yes or no? Is
No,
that
that's a philosophical assumption.
It's a philosophical assumption that
You assumed this is something that was described by David Hume as something unprovable, and he was able to show it a couple centuries ago. David Hume explained how we have to assume the continuity of natural laws. And so the idea
we do.
And so the idea that the natural laws today were the same 1,000 years ago or 1,000 years in the future is actually an assumption. And so right now you're making a philosophical assumption.
Okay, let me.
That you're using to disprove God's existence.
Well, no, I haven't even gotten there yet. I'm asking you these questions, and what's interesting is, basically, if I understand you correctly, correct me if I'm wrong. Do you think that a horse could fly sometime in the past?
Unless there was an intervention beyond known physics, then no.
Okay, then I think it's safe to say that we would have to categorize a story about a horse flying into mythology. Would that be fair?
In most cases, almost all cases, probably, yeah.
Okay, great. We're on the same page. Now, if we go to the Bible, which is history, we notice a number of claims made about things that happen that, like the flying horse,
but
we
now I'm not willing to make that assumption.
Why is the Bible different than the Quran? Because, by the way, the flying horse thing, that, well, if it's not in the Quran,
the Muhammad story.
The Muhammad or whatever the bleep it is. Okay.
Because I think there actually are good reasons to think that Christianity is true.
Like?
As I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, there are two things that I said. I think there is good historical reasons for the resurrection to accept it as true. And I also said...
You mentioned fine-tuning risen Christ and has done good. We couldn't resolve the beginning of the universe, or that it couldn't be natural, which I don't know what you mean by anything that's not natural. That's the other problem.
You don't know what I mean by it? I just mean it doesn't follow the natural laws.
But how do you know, what does that mean to not follow the natural laws, since that's what we're so used to? Well, but we are so used to the natural laws that we to posit that there's a thing that doesn't follow that. How would that even work? How would you know about it?
Because it appears as if the natural world came into existence at a specific point in time.
Does the appearance of something make it true?
All the evidence would suggest that is true.
What evidence?
Sorry?
So you say that
evidence? The evidence is that and this goes back to the beginning of the universe thing. The conclusion of almost all experts is that the universe did begin to exist, notwithstanding the terminology problems you'd like to suggest. There was a point in which there was no power point. That's the conclusion of the majority of the experts on the topic. And also, there's also clear logical reasons why that has to be the case. If it was true that the universe exists forever, if it was eternal, that would mean that it would have taken an infinite amount of time to get to this point in time. And an infinite amount of time can pass. So we could never reach this point in time. There's many reasons why
Well,
it's
there's
clear
a
that the
couple.
universe,
There's a couple of statements that I take umbrage with, but very
such
well.
as
Well,
no, but
the
what's your
infinite.
objection to the point I made about time? If the
Ah,
universe were, if the
here's the
universe was
problem.
eternal,
Well, here's the problem
it
that
would take
that
an infinite
okay.
amount of time
Here,
to get to this point in time.
here's the problem with infinity. If you posit God is also infinite in both directions, then God can't exist either in that
No,
sense.
you're misunderstanding. What do you mean by no? No one says God is infinite
Well,
in
they
terms
say
of
it's
like time.
eternal, so that's the same thing.
That,
Right.
well,
No time. So again,
I don't know
there's
if you understand what theists mean when they say God is infinite.
no.
Listen,
I don't think anyone can. That's the problem.
okay, but
But
listen,
but
what about the point I
nonetheless,
just made?
here's the thing with infinity. Okay, let me.
Yeah, infinity
There.
doesn't exist.
Right. It's a concept.
It's a
So
fictional concept,
right. Well, yes, to some degree, I
which
suppose.
means you
Uh,
can't have an infinite amount of time before this point in time,
well,
and so the
no.
universe is not
Yes.
eternal.
Well, you could have you could have an infinite anything. Okay,
No, you can't.
sure. Otherwise, you don't. Well, what do you think? Okay, in a trillion some odd years plus, the universe will experience what's known as heat death. It's a very long time away.
Sure. That's
And
not
after,
infinity.
well, what happens after that? And
The
after
universe,
that,
the amount of time will continue passing, but it will never hit infinity, ever.
well, because it's right, but it will never not hit infinity either. It just goes
Yeah,
on
it
and
will
on and
always not hit infinity.
on. Right,
It's
that's the
always going to
point.
be a finite amount.
From the perspective of anyone, it is equivalent to going on and on and on, right? We can't say, well, that's infinity, because we'll never get there, because there isn't an
It will
infinity.
always be
But
finite.
it will always just be at that point. But
It
my
will
point
always
is,
be finite.
we are traveling forward in time right now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if I had been born into a world that was traveling through time before I existed, and yet I'm
Yeah.
here, then it doesn't matter how long the world existed before me that I came into it, as long as time
Wait.
is moving forward. Is time?
That doesn't make any sense as a response to what I said.
Uh,
No, listen,
I'm trying to explain time to you. I mean, it's very difficult because you believe
infinity
you.
cannot exist.
How do you know that an infinity of time?
Well, I think my friend, the converted man, just left. He seems to have disappeared from the conversation. So, as I was saying, the reason why we can say for sure that the universe has always existed, or sorry, has not always existed, is because infinity can't exist in reality. The universe, if it was eternal, would require an infinite amount of time
Hold
for
on,
this point.
I hit a key.
I was
Or
beginning to preach, my friend.
yeah, I hit a key and something happened. It was not
All
good.
right, you're back
Let me,
now. But
yeah, let me pull up this here, okay? All
okay,
right,
let me
because
try to put it this way.
all right.
As philosophers have shown, if
Oh,
you
again with
suggest a reality,
philosophers. Which philosophers have
forget about
shown this?
philosophers.
Okay,
You seem to
good.
have a problem with
Make it
philosophers.
your argument. Make it just your argument. This is
Well, the
your
reason why I
argument.
cite philosophers is because I agree with them. I'm saying my argument and their argument. Okay, listen, I
Well,
won't
I don't
mention
care about
philosophers.
their argument.
I won't
I care
mention
about
philosophers,
your
all right?
argument. Okay, good.
There are logical contradictions that appear if you suggest that there could be an infinite amount of time, per se. Think about it this way. Imagine you had two people moving forwards, just
Mm-hmm.
in space, I don't know, whatever, and one was moving twice as fast as the other.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after a trillion years, the first person will be twice as far as the second person, and they will
Mm-hmm.
always be moving further and further away from them.
Yeah.
But at infinite time, they will be in the same position.
Not
That's a
if you're,
logical contradiction.
not if you're going forward.
Yeah, that is true. If you're going forwards,
right. That's
it,
what I'm saying
that's what
is
happens. You hit a logical contradiction. If two people are moving, one is moving faster. In as time passes, one person will always get further and further away. But when you put it at infinity, they'll be in the same spot.
well, if they're not moving forward through time, I suppose, but I'm not talking about that.
No,
Let
but
me
that's the
grab.
contradiction with infinity.
Well, um, according to your particular idea, let
Can you
me.
refute that?
I'm not going to get very much anywhere if you keep asking me to refute things, but I will explain what I mean.
You have
If
to.
that okay, because I don't have to do anything, but I
Well, you
will.
could just avoid the point and concede it. That's an
Well,
option
I
too.
could, but I'm not going to do that either. Okay, so here's the thing
You
with
say it.
infinite. By the way, just to make things clear, I am not saying that this is the way things are. I'm saying that this is the way, a way to view it. Okay, with the infinite anything. In this case, the universe. Okay, whatever that means. Okay, so time just keeps going that way, uh, and a very, very, very basically what we would consider infinite amount of time. It just always has been, whatever that was. Okay, but the direction that is the flow is constantly going forward, not backwards. So whatever happened
Yeah.
before doesn't matter because we're on the little train and it's going this way. Okay, so it at some point doesn't matter how much time there was in the before time, which I'll make red here, and then I'll make green this one because I like that. And at some point, since it's always going forward, it meets us, and we go along with the ride until we never get to the end because there isn't an end. But,
Uh-huh.
okay,
Yeah, you
so
just said
that
there's no infinity beyond this point.
well, no, I did. I
You
know.
literally.
When did it? I don't know if I did say that, but if I did, I misspoke perhaps. But I'm trying to say
Okay.
that there's no contradiction to having an infinite amount of time before
Yes, there is.
any point. No, because if time is always moving forward, then it doesn't matter. It will catch up to us at some
No, but the
point.
reason why it can't, if there was an infinite amount of time before us, is that it would have to move infinitely to reach our point in time. And it could never hit infinity. It'll never catch up.
But it's always moving forward. That's
But it would have to move forwards infinitely to catch up to us.
well, no. Because
Yes, there was an infinite amount of time before this point in time, according to the eternal universe.
yeah, but so that's what I'm saying. If time, this is assuming that time
It can't
exists,
complete an infinity, so it will never catch up to us.
but it's
It will approach us forever and never reach us.
well, okay. I think I think I get the misunderstanding maybe here, okay? Because this is something I've thought about from time to time. No joke intended, but I have seen that this is a potential hook that many apologists have used,
This is
and I
not
don't.
apologists. This is math.
No, it come well, it may be, but I've heard it come from apologists for Christianity, particularly
Look,
this idea that
I'm in
time.
university right now, and I took introductory mathematics and
I
calculus,
don't
whatever.
care. I don't care.
Infinity is defined as an abstract concept, and numbers, actual numbers, finite numbers, are real.
It is an abstract concept, yes, and as such, there are things that
Not real. That's what it means.
it's not
Abstract,
real,
not real.
right? So
So you can't pass an infinite amount of time.
because it's not real.
Exactly.
Well, you couldn't have an infinite anything then.
Okay.
But it's just a description of.
That refutes the eternal universe hypothesis.
It
because
also
requires...
it also refutes an eternal God.
Okay, so we've agreed your eternal universe is refuted. Now, how does it refute a God?
No.
Why not?
No, because we're saying this abstraction, right? This isn't, there isn't, you want to say that there isn't a thing of infinity. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
well, yes, I get what you mean. Okay, I think.
Okay.
And I'm saying it doesn't matter. Like, basically what you're talking about is just, a bunch of things going that way. And we can't, it's minus
time.
one. Yeah, it's minus one, it's minus two, etc., whatever. But if you started at negative, big, giant, huge number, and you started counting forwards, you eventually get to positive numbers. It doesn't matter.
No, you don't. Not if you start at negative infinity. If you start at negative infinity, you'll never get past negative infinity. You won't get to. You'll never get to negative 1 trillion.
I see.
You'll never get to negative 1 quadrillion.
So here's the thing: is obviously the negative infinity is not a thing, right? The infinity is not a thing. Okay, so let's just say arbitrarily that we're going to assign a number to it of some sort, and then we just start counting from that. Eventually, we get to the positive number of whatever. Just going to get to 1, whatever. That's an
Why are you
easy
starting
number.
at a negative number? You start at negative infinity.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's negative whatever that is. It's some huge, insane amount of events that precede.
But the question is it infinite or finite?
Well, if it has always been, then I suppose that's infinity in a
right,
sense.
And infinity, don't write minus 999, that's finite. That's the opposite. Write minus infinity.
But you said infinity doesn't exist.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying is
that's what you're saying does exist.
Well, I'm saying that, oh, jeez. I don't know. Maybe chat will let me know if they understand what I'm saying, because I'm not getting. I do disagree with you.
No, I said, can you agree with me? This is so clear.
No, it's not, because it is an abstraction. Infinity is something we came up with,
which means it's not real,
right? But it's also something that is useful in a sense of, we have this, you want to call this a finite number. Well, yes, it is, but this is representative of, let me put some dots after it, ... right? That's the infinity right there. That ... right?
That's not infinity.
Well, it goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, that's that. Have you ever taken a calculus class?
No.
There's a difference between approaching infinity and reaching infinity. Those are different things.
Okay. So then maybe the way to frame it so it doesn't break your brain is that time, or that the universe, or whatever you want to call it, has existed for approaching infinity amount that way. But as long as it's going forward, it doesn't matter what that is, because it's
approaching infinity is still finite.
Okay, it's always moving forward though, so it doesn't matter, because at some point it
does matter.
Hits the spot. Okay, whatever. I mean,
approaching infinity means it grows and grows and grows. Like if you have a function y equals x squared, then that, as you go to infinity on the x-axis, then you approach infinity on the y-axis. But no matter which point you choose on the x-axis, you will always get a finite point on the y-axis. Therefore, it is not infinite, it's finite.
Well, in your view, but this kind of goes into the paradox of...
That's just a simple function.
No. Have you heard of the little experiment? If you can't actually go a mile, because you can break down each and every step into an infinite amount of smaller...
No, but that was solved
steps.
500 years ago.
But it's the same thing, isn't it?
No, it's not. There's a difference between finite intervals and...
But it's not finite.
Infinitely small intervals.
Right, but you have infinitely small intervals, and if I can cross that, then what's the problem with also saying there's an infinite amount of time or existence or whatever we want to posit, and say we can cross that too? Why is it different? Why is it different though?
I just told you it's different because in one case, okay, so you're that Zeno's paradox, right? So if you have 1 meter, and you first of all have to cross half it, then you have to cross the other half. You have to cross the other half.
Right.
And you have to do that an infinite number of times. Therefore, you'll never reach the 1 meter.
Exactly.
That that is an infinite series of infinitely small values. You can have a series. Well, obviously, if you didn't take calculus or rules, you don't know what a series is. But you can have an infinite number of infinitely small segments that adds up to a finite number. But what you're suggesting with an
Okay, so
infinite amount
what?
of time,
Let me
oh,
let me
listen, let me finish. Let me finish.
yeah.
What you're suggesting with this infinite amount of time in the past is not something that adds up to a finite number, like 1 meter. You're saying that something adds up to an infinite amount, and that is that you
I'm
can't cross an infinite amount.
well, but you did in the Zeno paradox.
No, you
So,
crossed 1 meter.
well, eventually, but if you break it down, you've crossed all this infinitive amounts of infinites.
No, no, no.
It
Listen,
just depends
there's a
upon how
reason
you
why
look at
you can reach 1 meter, but you can only approach infinity. Infinite segments can add up to a finite whole.
it. Okay, so
Infinite
maybe it's
segments
infinite
can't add up to
segments.
infinity.
Maybe it's infinite segments of reality before the T1 point then.
Okay, what?
Well, maybe there's infinite segments of reality that add up to the one that is our reality or what
That
have
doesn't
you.
even make sense.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't it apply? Well,
Listen, you appeal to Zeno's paradox to suggest you can cross an infinite total. Zeno's
yeah,
paradox is about crossing a finite total in infinite segments.
you're crossing. Well, you're crossing. You're still crossing an infinite amount of things, though,
No, you're
right?
crossing an infinite number of you crossing a finite total. You can't extend
There isn't a
crossing a finite
finite.
total.
There's a finite total within infinity. What? Or
No,
an
no, no, no.
infinity within a
Zeno's
finite.
paradox
Right.
is
There's
about
an
crossing a
infinity
finite
with.
total.
Right, but there's an infinite amount of
You
things
can't
in that finite.
extend crossing a finite total to crossing an infinite total. There's no
But
solution
there.
for that. There's a
Right.
solution. There's a mathematical solution to Zeno's paradox that was developed 500 years ago. There's no solution to crossing an infinity. Those are different things.
What if they're the same though? That's what I'm saying. Is why couldn't they just be the
What?
same thing? Why couldn't they
I
just be
just
the
told
same
you.
thing? But
One
no,
involves
no,
a
no.
finite total. The other involves an infinite total. You completely misunderstand Zeno's paradox.
Perhaps that might be the case,
That is
but
the case.
I'm saying no. Well, you're saying that, but I don't know that you're right.
I, I don't. It doesn't matter. I explained it to
Yeah,
you. You
no, it
don't have to
doesn't
search this up.
matter. I
One is
mean,
a
I'm not the one
finite
with a belief
total.
in something that I can't justify.
It's a
You know,
finite. Stop deflecting the point. You're saying you're extending crossing a finite total to
hmm
crossing an infinite total. That's a non
well,
sequitur.
he crossed the infinite total though into
No,
the,
no, we crossed the finite total. 1 meter. That's Zeno's
but
paradox.
it's not 1 meter because we broke it down into several infinities.
No, no, but it's an infinity that adds up to 1 meter. That's a
Right.
series.
Okay.
That's an
So then it
infinite
could be
series.
then it's an infinity of of time that adds up to time.
What?
It's an infinity of time that adds up to a finite time. Just replace Zeno's
That's
paradox with
finite.
the universe.
That means it's not eternal.
Well, but it was I didn't say eternal. I said infinite. It goes on and
That's
on
the
and
same.
on, but it fits nicely within this little spot.
Yeah, that fits only with a finite universe.
Well, according to you. Okay, so fine
Oh my
tuning.
gosh.
Okay, so fine tuning because again we can't resolve that because
Jeez, brother.
reasons. Fine tuning. What is fine tuning?
I think fine tuning is, well, you have a series of natural constants that the universe operates by. And the idea of fine tuning is that if they were different by even a small amount, then life would not be possible. And so the fine tuning argument suggests that the most rational explanation is that the constants were finely tuned in that way, such as to allow the existence of human life. And it was designed by a designer, which we define as God. And that's the
Now,
idea of the fine tuning argument.
okay, so how do you or anyone know that if we all one of them is gravity if I'm correct, I could be wrong. I've seen a list at one point of what these uh, variables are. I believe one was radiation. I don't recall what these numbers are. What are they referring to? Do you know offhand? Because I don't know offhand.
What they're referring to? I just
Like,
opened up because I have a reference for this. I would suggest that everyone goes to the article on fine tuning by the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It lists many of these constants, and it has a large number of references for the description of why the range that those constants can exist in before life ceases to become possible.
okay,
And
so it's
if you want, I can just read off the page
so
and
well, no. It's good enough that well, I'll add the link in later. But okay, so if I well, what's one of them? Is one of them gravity or what's one of these constants? Just
one
so
of them is the strength of a strong nuclear force.
okay, the strong nuclear force. So if that was off by one, would we still exist?
By one?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't give by numbers, it gives by percentages in this
Okay.
article.
If it was off by 0.1%, would life still exist?
It might.
Okay. So how many degrees are we allowed to alter these things? Because before you said, well, if it was off at all, then life wouldn't be possible. At least not our type of life, but other type of life. Who knows?
Yeah, so the one I just read, the one I just read by randomly scrolling this page, I think it says that the strong nuclear force can vary by 50%.
Okay,
Other
so
ones vary
50%.
by,
That's a pretty wide margin.
well, if it was twice as strong or twice as weak, it would be possible. But that's just one of them.
Okay.
I can give you ones that really do value by extremely small magnitudes. Look at this. The cosmological constant, if it varies by 1 in 10 to the 50, then it's game over.
Okay, so but that's for us. That's for our type of life.
Oh no, that's for any type of life.
I don't think it says that.
Oh, it does.
Well, what computer simulations have they done to show that that's the case?
Because listen, some of these constants, like think about the implications of some of these constants. What was that? The Higgs boson particle?
So they
It.
haven't done any. Have they done any simulations to show that it is the case that if you altered this, that no
I'm
life
trying to
at all?
explain why it is the case. If the
No.
Higgs boson particle,
Okay, so they didn't
if
do any simulations.
you don't need to do simulations because if the Higgs, for example, the Higgs boson particle, the mass of
Mhm.
it was different by an extremely small amount, protons could not come together to form atoms.
Okay,
How you can't get life out of randomly scattered protons?
and well, sure you can.
You
You have a magical being that wills it to be such.
no, naturally, man,
Well,
natural.
it's using natural magic.
Because listen, if protons can't come together, then all you have is at most a composition of one proton, and one proton isn't alive.
Well,
Life is carbon based. That
our
requires
life
at least.
is, but that doesn't mean that no life could ever arise from such a thing.
Do you think one proton is alive?
I don't know. Depends
Oh
what
come
life
on!
means. It depends what life is. It depends what you
Life
define it as. I
life is
mean, not in
defined.
this reality, but in a different reality.
Life is defined as being made out of at least one cell in biology.
Okay, fair enough. So our type of life, or at least the life that we've defined, isn't possible if this was off. Okay, so we got really lucky. So what?
Oh, okay.
The
So that
universe is not permitting for life anywhere else. I mean, it seems like, of
so
course, any universe that could support life, well, it could support it, and we're here. If we were in a universe that couldn't support life, that would be kind of odd. That would be very
wait, what?
interesting if we
Wait,
were
what we are?
if we were in a universe that didn't support life, but we were there anyways, and we said, this is kind of weird, but everything says that we shouldn't be able to live here. That would be
Yes.
very weird.
Yeah, if the universe didn't support life and we were alive in it, that would be weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would actually be a good argument for there being something more than just the natural forces at work. But that's
That
not what
would
you
just be a
have.
logical contradiction.
Well, no. If you had something that was above and beyond all the things that we understand, then you could have such a universe. You could have any universe you wanted because it
Okay, what you
sets up
mean
the
there
rules. It
is
sets
that
up the
you
rules.
could have a life that doesn't support natural life, but maybe God made something supernatural.
Well, yeah, or some other thing that we haven't even thought of, or whatever.
But
Who knows?
it would be
Why not?
contradictory if it would be contradictory if you said that there is no natural life possible, but natural life existed. That would be contradictory.
Well, and well, I suppose, but then you'd say, well, if there was a supernatural, whatever the bleep that means, or
Anyways,
magical
what's your
being,
point?
well, that the so-called fine tuning is more about. I see it as we're here. Isn't that interesting? And oh, these numbers, they let us be here, and if they were off, we wouldn't be here. Okay, cool. And so
So,
what?
is
Why
this
does
the
that matter? Huh? Yeah, the
is
anthropic principle, right?
yeah, the
So
anthropic
what?
principle
We're here,
says,
and
yeah. The
what's your
anthropic
point?
principle says that we couldn't we couldn't wonder. We could only what was it again? If life wasn't possible, we wouldn't exist. And the fact that we
If we
exist
weren't here to observe it, we couldn't observe it. I mean, it's kind of,
and we're here to
and
observe
so
it.
we're here, so therefore we're going to find a universe that has things that allow us to be here, unless the universe was not based on any sort of rules that are comprehensible, and it is for some reason, and that
Yeah,
reason
the thing
seems
is
to be
that about the
constrained.
anthropic principle is that it's not even a point because it doesn't explain anything.
Well, no,
It's just an observation.
well,
Okay,
nor does the fine tuning you're talking about. You said, well, you have these numbers, and one of them you can switch from 50 degrees. I mean, that's a coin flip. Another one maybe it's more
yeah,
precise
1 in
than
10 to
that.
the 15.
Okay, so it's a bit more nuanced on that
Yeah, a
particular
bit more.
point. And what's your point? So
And the
what?
point and the point and
If
if we
I calculate the probability of my existence, I'll get some absurdly high number. Because if you break down anything, you can get insanely high numbers. So what?
the point is that it's not that we just have a random number that's unlikely. It's that we out of all the things we have a super unlikely number that just so happens to also be the one that allows life and humans to exist. And that's what
Well,
makes it and
life and humans
that's the point.
exist in this particular thing because they can.
Yes.
And I think you're saying, well, that's very odd. So it must
Yeah,
be
the so
God.
what is that the so
That's what I'm
what is
saying. So
that
what? Who cares?
the so
We
what
got
is that
lucky. What's your point?
oh
How
but the thing is it's so unlikely to be chance.
we don't know that. We don't. I mean, so
Didn't
okay. It's unlikely to be chance. Let's just go with that.
okay.
Okay, but that's all we know of. It's like, well, it's unlikely, but it still happened.
But if
Doesn't
it's a
matter if
very
it's unlikely. Doesn't matter how unlikely it is. It still
yeah, it does.
happened. At the end of flipping a million coins, if all of them were heads, I go, well, this was a fair coin, and that result was very unlikely, but it still happened. So what?
Actually, I don't want to be too picky, but on that particular point, flipping an infinite number of heads is actually equal in probability to any other sequence. It's a
How
fallacy. I don't remember which fallacy it's called. I think it's called the gambler's fallacy.
why
But
wouldn't
anyways, I understand your point. I'm not trying to be picky.
why wouldn't there be life everywhere if it was so
Sorry.
well tuned? Why wouldn't there be life everywhere if it was so fine tuned for life? Why wouldn't life be everywhere in the universe?
Why does it have to be everywhere to be fine tuned?
Well, I'm just saying if it's
Hey,
so
why
well,
does it have to be everywhere?
well, wouldn't that be more interesting? Wouldn't that be harder to explain? If it's
Maybe, but why
finer?
does it have to be that?
I'm just saying that it would be if it was. Wouldn't that be even harder to say? Well, how did that happen?
I
But
mean, I guess it would. If life
it
existed
seems
everywhere, that would
to
be pretty
me,
weird. But
it
it's
seems
already
to me
sufficiently
that
weird as it
I
is.
am happy with the mystery of the fine tuning, if that's even really a thing in the way that you describe it. Whereas you assert that that can only be explained by your particular deity of all the different deities.
No. I'm saying no. This is an argument for theism, not Christianity.
Well, it's an argument for certain types of theism because there's other types of theism that wouldn't go with that argument.
Okay, well then it's only an argument for those types of theisms.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So fine tuning leads to particular types of theisms because it's very unlikely by some thing to be just chance. Is that what you're saying? So
yeah, I'm saying that. Listen,
the unlikeliness of a thing means that it had to be by theism. Well, then all things, since everything is rewindable to an infinitely huge, okay, I shouldn't use the word infinite, you don't like it, a big huge number of high in probability that I would exist in this moment, that must mean that everything needs theism, and there is no natural explanation for anything. Well, I mean, the probability that I would be me is also really high. It's really improbable that I would exist. If I rewound it and counted out the probability.
I think you're making a mistake in probability theory here. Listen, there's between the thing is that if you were born,
what's the probability that theism is true? Well, wouldn't we have to calculate all the different types of theisms together?
No. So what you're saying is it's also very improbable that you exist. That's actually a Glamber's fallacy because every other alternative universe is equally improbable. If someone else was born, that would be equally improbable to you being born, which means that the probability, it means that there's a certain chance that you'll get something that's technically that improbable, which means it's actually not improbable at all.
Okay, so why?
Because all alternatives, no matter who was born, that sequence would be equally improbable to yours.
Okay, and then
nothing improbable happened.
All right, so the same could be true of the universe, as far as I can tell.
The same isn't true for theism because sorry, not theism, fine tuning. Yes. Sorry, the same isn't true for fine tuning because not all options are equally probable. The constants as we have them now are extremely improbable compared to the other ones.
Well, I don't know. How do we base the improbability? That's one of those weird things with the
the probability of life versus no life.
I still don't. I mean, if you have degrees, let's say that it was, 0.1% or whatever number you want to say it is. That it has that within these. You have 50-50 on one, you have 0.00 whatever for the other one, you have whatever for the, and that all adds up to some percentage. And I still say, well, that's a little bit of wiggle room, maybe not much, but even if there was zero wiggle room, so what? Why does that mystery then say, well, it has to be this answer? It has to be this then, because I don't know the answer.
There are multiple
therefore
technically possible answers. I mean, it is still technically possible to just be chance.
Right.
The point is that we have to go beyond just saying that there are possibilities. We should move on to probabilities. And it just because of how tiny the number is of chance, it seems to me just more probable to be due to theism, which provides a quick and ready explanation.
It seems to be that way.
And according to all reason. According to all reason.
Well, no. According to your reason. And
well, do you have a refutation?
Just because something seems to be that way, does that mean it is that way?
Well, do you have a refutation?
Just because it seems to be that way, is it that way?
But we have no, that doesn't prove it. I'm not proving it. Okay. But I'm going according to all the evidence.
Well, but all you have is, well, it seems to be rather weird that we got lucky. And I say, yeah, so we got lucky. And what's your point?
Yeah, my point is that
I'm not impressed by how lucky we got.
Out of all the possible arrangements of constants, it just so happens to be the one perfect arrangement of unbelievably possible
how does that
variability that allows for human life to exist.
Yeah, and so we got really
And I'm
lucky.
and
That's
yeah, and that seems to be better explained by theism than
well,
chance.
it just well, even if you have a better explanation, that doesn't mean it is the true explanation because you can make up a story
Okay,
that fits the
I
evidence.
agree with that. I agree with that.
I'm satisfied with the mystery of saying, well, it's chance, and that's because I can't say that. Well, it can't just be chance because I know chance is a thing, or at least it's a concept at any rate. And
Okay, I agree. All I'm saying is that it's the best explanation.
no, it's well, it's an explanation that you think is the best. I don't think it's a good explanation. I don't want to rank
Yeah,
explanation.
yeah, okay, listen, man. You can keep saying that I think it's the best. Can you show me the reasons why I'm wrong?
I think I've covered that as I asked the various questions that I did.
I think I answered which one didn't I answer?
Well, you haven't shown that just because it's a big giant number of chance that means anything beyond that it's chance.
Yeah, I can't disprove that, but I can show it's so unlikely and that there are more
But that doesn't.
rational explanations.
No, you simply say, well, it's unlikely, and that's it. I have a mystery. Why not just stop there?
Why would I stop there? Because I can make statements based off the
You can
evidence
make
beyond
all
that,
sorts of statements, but
based
they
on the
might be
evidence.
wrong. But
And one statement I can make based off of the evidence
any
is that the
evidence.
best explanation is
Uh,
God.
no, no, because that's not evidence at that point.
Sure, it is. What?
No. Okay, so Christ rose from the dead. So appeal to the historical method that doesn't apply to your book of mythology. Is that where we're going with here? Or?
It's not technically the historical method. The historical method establishes a couple of facts that we
That we have to ignore
no
because
no no
Jesus came
what
back
no
from
no
the
wait,
dead.
let me explain, because you're asking me the questions, right? So the idea is that history establishes a couple of natural facts, and those natural facts we could suggest that the most rational explanation is the resurrection.
Okay, let's go with it. Sure. So what are these? I've heard them before, but go ahead. What are these? What are these supposed facts that you have?
Okay, well, I agree. I actually, let me rephrase that. They're not facts, right?
Okay.
They're just they're just
Uh huh.
following the historical methodology like you would with any other question. They just appear to be based on the evidence what happened in the past. They're not facts. I can agree
Right.
with that.
Right. Okay.
And
So
those would be the crucifixion,
okay, we
the
agree.
burial,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The disappearance of the body from the tomb, and
Mm-hmm.
the belief that on the part of the disciples, their belief that they had seen the risen Jesus. And those are the four
Mm-hmm.
historical claims.
Okay. Well, I'll grant all of them, and
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
but that doesn't mean anything. It
Sure
doesn't
it
mean
does. Because
no,
the most rational explanation of all the ones we can come up with is that Jesus rose from the dead.
no, no. That's not no because you're basing that on a leap of logic that is not warranted
What
by
leap of
all of
logic?
well that the belief that they had is true.
No, no, no. I said that the belief. No, I didn't say. I said the belief. They thought they
They
saw Jesus.
thought that it happened. Maybe they thought that they saw him, but that doesn't mean they did.
No, it doesn't mean it. But if you take those four facts all together, not individually, but all together, the best explanation for all four of them at
Well,
once is that Jesus rose from the dead.
no. The best explanation is they thought that Jesus rose from the dead
Why is that the best explanation?
because we have never seen anyone rise from the dead.
So,
So we have no way to uh, we have no proof that anyone could come back from the dead. When you're dead, you tend to stay dead.
so
That's it.
this
That's the end of
actually
the story.
this is an argument that Hume made, I think, himself,
I
which
don't care
is
who made the argument.
but I'm not saying that just Hume made it. Let me get. I'm saying something more than that. And so this reasoning is actually mathematically fallacious, because what you're saying, and I would agree with this, because we haven't seen anyone rise from the dead, there's a low prior probability before we consider any of the evidence that Jesus rose from the dead. Now that is true. That it is true that
The
there's a
greater
low prior
probability is if he existed and died, he stayed dead. That's it.
No, yeah, that's more likely as a
Yeah,
prior probability. But
and
the reason why that's fallacious is
what
because it doesn't account for the evidence that we do see. So it can be true
what
that an
evidence?
event has a low. Listen, it can be true that an event has a low prior probability, but
What
after you
evidence do
consider
we
the
have that
evidence,
he
its
actually?
probability goes up.
You don't have any evidence except for the things that I agreed with. Is like he died on a cross. Yeah, okay. He was buried. Well, probably not buried in the way that you imagined, but we're
I
not going
think
to
he
go over
was.
that. Well, that's fine. I don't care. I don't want to argue over how history actually was to what your beliefs of history
No, I know
were.
Bart Ehrman's
Uh,
argument, and few historians agree
no, he
with
was.
him on that.
Well, he was put in a mass grave probably. But even if he wasn't, and he was somehow treated specially
Yeah,
after being
yeah.
crucified
Ehrman's argument that he
with
was put
laws
in a
that
mass
didn't.
grave is wrong.
Well, no, I don't know. But regardless of where he was put, when you're dead, you tend to stay dead. So he was dead, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, we saw Jesus! Oh my goodness, we saw Jesus! Ah, we saw Jesus!" And that's it. Now, as
Yeah,
far as the body,
multiple people. Listen, because that's not just it.
well,
Because there's more context to that.
we don't
There
know
are
that it
different
was
people.
multiple people. We were told after the fact at some point by somebody that wasn't there that there were multiple people that all saw it.
But he knew them.
Supposedly he did. We don't know that he actually did.
Yes, he did.
How do we know? How? Oh,
That
he did.
we have
Okay.
a
All right. So he
first-hand
actually knew.
eyewitness testimony from that time period of
And I.
someone who was alive when Jesus was alive.
And did he see the? Did he see this happen and write it
Yeah,
down?
he claims to have seen it. He's one of the
Okay.
people who we
Right.
had, and we have his testimony about it.
Right.
And
So he's
in
nuts.
First Corinthians,
Okay.
listen.
So he
In
made up a
first,
story, and
and in 1 Corinthians 15,
I don't
there
care.
is. No,
I
okay,
don't
listen.
care. I
You
don't
don't
care
have to
about
care.
any of the Bible. It doesn't matter to me. It's all work of.
It doesn't matter if you don't care. I'm talking about history. And in
Well,
1 Corinthians 15, there's a tradition that Paul cites that's demonstrably a tradition. He doesn't say it's a tradition, but
well,
historians can show that it's a prior tradition in the Christian community
yeah.
that says that the disciples and these other
Yeah.
individuals
Okay.
also
So
had these appearances.
they had this belief early on. Maybe
Right.
they all conspired to pretend that they saw the Jesus rise, or maybe
Why would they do that?
Maybe it came up because they could, because religion is a powerful tool.
Wait, why would they make up something they don't believe?
Why not?
That doesn't.
And then
answer the
there are
question.
people that believe in things like psychic powers, but those don't exist.
They believe that though.
There are people that believe that their guru of choice has levitated, but that's not true either.
Yeah, they believe that, but you're saying they don't believe that and they made it up anyways.
Well, they could have. Sure.
That's a false analogy to what you just said.
No, I'm
You're
saying that people can make
your
up
analogies
stuff.
to people who
No.
believe things.
They
That's a
can
false
make up
analogy.
that
You're
they
saying they
believe
don't
stuff,
believe
but,
that.
well, people lie. I know it's amazing, but people lie. I don't know if you knew that.
Why would they lie and be persecuted?
Well, they weren't persecuted.
Yeah, they were.
No, not for that. That's been shown.
Yeah, for that. No, it's been shown that the persecution was exaggerated.
Not a single disciple can be shown to have been persecuted specifically for the belief of the risen Christ.
Yes, they can.
Nope.
Josephus mentions the execution of James and Paul.
And what did James and Paul get executed for?
Sorry?
What did they get executed for, and by whom? Under what conditions?
They were executed for the Jewish authorities, and it's because for claims of blasphemy. Josephus says both of those things.
Okay, so for blasphemy, they were executed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Even if that's true, which
okay,
is that being killed for saying that Christ is risen? Did they get a chance to repent? And even if they didn't, well, they're too deep in it now. If they said, "Hey, yeah, no, we lied,"
what?
if they said we made it up, right? To try
at the beginning, they weren't into it at all.
Right, but I'm saying they didn't know that eventually their heads would be on the chopping block when they started the story. But once they started, it got out of control, and they're like, "Well, it's too late now." And then all of a sudden, it's like, "Hey, you're guilty for blasphemy." Well, if they say, no, it's all made up, they're still going to get killed no matter what they do. So in that case, they might as well double down, especially if they've come to believe it after so long of pretending to believe it, because that is a way that brains can operate at times. If you pretend
So
something
you
is
literally
true,
made up
well,
a whole
no,
narrative of
yeah.
inventions to circumvent the evidence that
There
they
isn't
actually
any evidence.
believed from the start.
Well, I don't
Yes,
care if
all
they
the
did.
evidence says they believed it from the
No,
start.
no.
Every single piece.
But I'm saying, even if
Yes,
they,
it does.
doesn't. Well, I don't care if they believed or not. It doesn't matter to me, because it could still all be
Yes,
made
it
up.
does. You just made an argument against it. Of course it matters to
People
you.
can believe all sorts of things and be wrong. Beliefs are not fact. It's a belief.
But you
It's
just
not
tried to
true.
argue against all the evidence that they
There
didn't
isn't
believe it.
any evidence. That's the problem. All you have is people
There
simply
is
believe.
evidence.
That's not evidence of anything. That's evidence that people came to believe something that wasn't true. So what? That happens. People believe in
So you
Scientology.
concede the point that they came to that belief.
No,
Why
they could
not?
have
All
made
the
it up.
evidence says that from
No,
Paul
there's no
himself,
evidence.
who
No,
knew the
I don't care.
disciples,
Paul could
and
have
from the
made up
early
the whole
tradition,
story,
from the
for
first
all I
few
know.
years of the community, which says
Yeah.
which was composed by them, and says they believed it.
Whatever. All right. Okay, so Christ came back from the dead
Whatever, huh?
because of the Bible. Got it. So Christianity has apparently done good in
No,
the
wait,
world.
not got it. Let's go. Wait. That's a nice attempt to circumvent the evidence, but the fact
There
is that
isn't any
according to the
evidence.
primary historical documents we have,
And there is no
according to the primary
or
historical documents we have
mythological
from that
document.
time period, and we have different independent ones.
Yeah.
That's what they believed.
Well, it doesn't, and they believed wrong. They believed in something that was not. Because
And so
people.
we have the evidence that they did come to believe that, and that there was an empty tomb in all likelihood.
Oh,
and that
wow! Because nobody can take a body. Well, you know what? I have a different theory. Okay, here's
why would they steal the body if they didn't believe it?
Somebody else could have.
Why would? Why? What?
Why not?
What? People.
But I have another one.
So someone.
I have another one. Okay.
So someone. Okay, you have another one. Let's try. Hey, maybe it's not as bad as these other ones.
I have another naturalistic explanation for you, because you don't like this one, okay? Even though that's not my burden to give any explanation at all, it's completely and fully the burden of the theist to show that any of this is true in the first place, which no one has ever done.
I'm fulfilling that burden right now.
No,
and you're coming up with ridiculous evasions.
No. Well, no, okay. So Jesus said to his disciples, "Take of my flesh, and this is my body, and this is my blood," and all that, right?
Okay.
Right. He said that, yes, or something like that. Okay. So he died, and one of the disciples was like, "Hey guys, remember what he said? If we take of his body and his blood, he's with us." So maybe they went in and ate him. It'd only take them like a week if they all joined in. So that's where the body went. They ate Jesus.
Wait, what? That's your explanation?
Sure, why not? It's more plausible than he actually came back from the dead. Everything is more plausible.
How the hell is that more plausible?
Well, because he told them to eat him, and so they ate him. And now he's gone.
Wait. Why do you think that's more plausible?
Because
why do you think that
everything is more plausible than somebody coming back from the dead? Because we have absolutely zero examples of anyone coming back from the dead once they're actually dead. We don't have any example of that happening, not even one. And to say, well, but they believe that.
Well, I'm not granting that. I'm saying we do.
Of course you're not. Yeah, you have the Jesus, right? The special exception.
Right.
I'm
not granting that there are no examples.
Well, there's other people that came back from the dead. I mean, there was a whole bunch of people that popped out of the graves. So coming back from the dead, I mean, it happened all the time back then. But it doesn't happen now, so I have no reason to think that it did happen back then. So I classify it as mythology and move on with my life, as you should.
That's a non sequitur. Just because it doesn't happen now doesn't mean it didn't happen then.
Oh, well, because magic happened back then, but it doesn't happen now. Great, okay. So let's go with the last one.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, okay. Has done good. So Christianity has done good. Well,
you haven't shown it. You haven't. I don't grant that.
That's fine. We're moving on. Okay, that's fine because we're again we're approaching a couple hours here. I'm done after this last point. Has Christianity has done good, even if true, does that make the system true? That if an X system produces good,
I admit for this one that I admit for this point I made that there is one assumption you have to grant, and I think and it's your opinion completely if you want to accept this assumption or not. You have to you have to grant the assumption that things like natural rights and human goodness or whatever, you have to grant that these things are actually good.
I think that they can be viewed as good, yes, because my ethical system is, well, it's utilitarian with some modifications, but nonetheless, that's the ethical system I like. I don't know.
If you have an ethical system that grants, if you have an ethical system that grants this definition of good, then only under this circumstance will what I'm saying work. And even then, this one, it's not a proof or anything. It just suggests what appears to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can go through any one of these examples if you would like me to.
Well, no,
historically,
I'll grant that Christianity, broadly speaking, has been capable or has done some good and has done some evils. And how much good or how much evil, I don't know if anyone's bothered to ever quantify that, or even if
but the argument is specific is that it has done actually more good than any other system.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you would show that, but even if it could be shown that, let's just say that it was, for sake of argument, does that make it true, or does it just make it very useful? Because I would say, well, it's very useful, sure, but that doesn't mean it's true.
Well, it doesn't prove it's true.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
it doesn't prove it. But
I would have to see the ample amounts of data, and it would take a lot of data to show that overall this system does better than other systems.
Would you like to see that data?
If you have it, sure.
Yeah, so I do a lot of reading I read the literature a lot in history, and there are several things many things that are historically attributed to Christianity. The notion of natural rights in all our legal systems originates from Christian theology. It comes with that. The idea of social revolution. Every social movement, every social revolution you've ever seen, these things. There was no examples of that prior to Christianity. Christianity developed the notion of social revolution. The first peace movement in history was it's called the Pax Dei, or the Peace of God, and it happened around the year 1000. And of course, as the Peace of God, it was a Christian movement to peace, and further peace movements in the history of Europe and then the world started to become more common from then. The hospitals, when Christianity became the majority or took over under Constantine of the Roman Empire, within a few decades of then, there was no general access to hospitals in the Roman Empire. But within a few decades from then, hospitals become pretty much ubiquitous. It's considered, by some historians, they describe it as the second medical revolution of history. And so really the modern hospital. And there's another book I could point to, published I think last year or 2 years ago even, that shows that further in the Middle Ages, the modern hospital would come out of these Christian institutions. Even the modern university develops out of the Christian schools in the Middle Ages. Because you had these cathedrals, and they would say, okay,
regardless, even grant if I did, but I, all of this that you've said, do you have all of this quantified as data in like some website that I can, click on different things and verify it, et cetera, and have you matched it against every other system that's ever existed in all of time that we know about? At any rate, obviously, I'm not going to ask you to list systems that we don't know about. That would be unfair. But in order to actually
I don't have such an infinitely exhaustive list, but I can say that in terms of, well, for example, other religions, I don't think there's even one example for any other religion that equals to any of the examples I listed.
Well, you don't know.
Like, what has Buddhism done?
You have no examples. That's the problem. Is
Yeah,
you would have
the
to
point
have.
Is there's no examples.
But you don't know that because you haven't bothered to look.
I have studied this.
You've studied the other religions and you came with no examples of goods that they did.
I can't. Well, you can say that, maybe this little thing happened. I can't give you like a civilizational good.
Right. So that's kind of my point. Is the data set that would be, if we were to do this honestly, which I would love to do. I mean, it'd be an interesting project. We'd have to have more than just us tackling the issue, if you will. We'd have to have other people to make sure that our biases are kept in check, whatever biases we might have.
Yeah, that's true. That's why I'm
have to
offering
say,
my argument. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it might be the case that it's the most, it does the most good, or has done or is doing the most good, and whatever. I don't know, because it hasn't been shown to be the case, so I can't believe it.
Well, I'm giving you the evidence that I'm familiar with.
Well, and I'm familiar with a lot of what you're saying as well, but there's a lot of other history that I'm also familiar with that has done, other systems have done good, and you could say, well, do we ignore the evil? No, of course not. We'd have to do that, and then we'd have to ultimately say, well, what's going to be the quantifying thing that numbers this? Are we going to base it on things that we view as prolonging a society's lifespan, or individual freedom, or what? We'd have to have some sort of merit system to devise what's the best system, and it would be interesting to do. But I don't think you've done it. I don't think anyone's done it. And unless and until they do, I have to be skeptical of the conclusion.
Well, I don't think you can quantify it. It's more of a broad sort of conclusion. It would be like saying, throughout the Roman Empire, I'm just making this up, by the way. Like, it was just like, throughout the Roman Empire, it became more common to hunt seals. I just made that up, but that's a broad. You don't have to quantify the number of seals that were killed at the beginning and the end. But if all the data suggests that, you certainly start finding more seal hunting facilities, the Roman flags, and I don't know. I mean, you could draw that broad historical conclusion. And I know what I'm not a historian, right? I haven't proved this. I have read a lot of literature, and I'm just offering this as my argument that I could be wrong on. I'm open to being wrong.
I would love to see the data correlation on that. I think it would be an epic undertaking. But even at the end of it, again,
there are some analyses of this. There are two academic. There's one academic book I like to refer to called, published by Cambridge University Press in 2016, called Christianity and Freedom, Volume 1, Historical Perspectives, and then a more recent one, I think 2 years ago, by Tom Holland, called The Making of the Western Mind. And those are two examples.
Okay.
By professional historians.
Yeah, if you could just make a note of that. Like I said, any and all books or whatever that you want me to cite to people, I'll put in the description. Just email me, whatever you think is appropriate. Because obviously it's like, well, let me pause while I go read that book and come back.
All right,
but okay, we're beyond my ability to think coherently anymore, and I'm sure you think that that's been the case since the start, and that's fine. And it was a great grand battle, and it is up to neither of us to decide the victor, because it's ultimately up to the audience to parse out who, if anyone, had some sort of bearing of any. I didn't give any premises, so I don't even think I have a syllogism. Oh, wait, no, I do have one syllogism I could tack on. Do you have a syllogism that you could reduce everything to, or no? I think it'd be unfair for me to offer a syllogism if you don't have one.
I have no idea.
Okay. All right, then. Very well. It is up to the audience and those who view this to decide who, if anyone, had any evidence of any sort, any sort of test, or any sort of valid and sound argumentation. And if they cannot find one of us that did, they should be skeptical of both conclusions, which means that skepticism still wins. Wait a minute. That can't be right. thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining Wasteman. I think I have another person that would love to talk to you some other time. So if you'd like to talk again about things, he definitely is biting at the chomp to do that. Thank you for your time.
Send me an email.
Yeah. Okay. I'll ask him if I can. Well, give you his email, your vice versa, or whatever. So thank you for your time, Wasteman, and thank you all the audience for their time and energy. And lobsters exist. I think we can all agree that lobsters exist. Or do they?
I don't
know. Do we agree on that?
I think I ate them all. I think they're all gone now.
Oh man. We didn't. Well,
Yeah.
That's a good. Well, maybe they, after you ate them, they came back from the dead, anyways. Okay. Goodbye,
There you go.
everybody. All right, I'm gonna hit the button here and say fin to everybody in chat. And there was a lot of chat, and there I don't know if there was any. Let me see real quick if there's any question for you. Oh my goodness. Bleep me. There was questions, but I mean, there's just no way to. Maybe you'll go back over the questions in chat and answer them in text on the video proper. That's the only way to deal with that makes sense. Okay, goodbye. I'm hitting the button. All right, here's the button. You want to say anything before I hit the button?
No, I'm good. I think that's all I need to say.
Okay, button. And